We're not on the air yet. So. Good evening. This is the July 14th meeting of the Cross Hill Township Public Services Commission. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to
Next, we're going to call the roll. Riley?
Here.
Kennedy?
Here.
Schmidtke?
Here.
Wilder? Ron Wilder is, at least at this point, absent. Nelson?
Present.
Budney?
Present.
And Mr. Benaz. We have almost full board tonight. Next, I entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda. Are there any additions or deletions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Like to make a motion to approve the agenda as stated.
Moved and supported that tonight's agenda be approved as distributed. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is approved. Next, we have the minutes of our June 9th meeting. All had a chance to look at those. I have a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of the June 9th, 2015 meeting.
Support. Any discussion?
I'll abstain.
Records show that Mr. Riley abstained. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
I think that was unanimous, so we'll move on. Next, we have approval of the bills, vouchers, $13,383 to $13,391, displayed on pages 5 through 11 of our packet. Are there any questions? I have a motion to approve if there are no questions.
Motion to approve the bills, vouchers 13,383 to 13,391.
There's support.
Support.
Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's passed. Next, we have pages 12 through 16, a review of the revenues and expenditures for the water sewer funds and our refuse fund. If there are no questions, we'll just receive and file the report. And finally, we have the Treasurer's Report of May 2015. Are there any questions on the Treasurer's Report?
It's actually for June. It's for June.
For June, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Read May, it says May. All right, so for June, are there any questions? If not, entertain a motion to accept.
Motion to accept the Treasurer's Report for June 2015.
Their support.
I'll second it.
Supported that the Treasurer's Report be accepted. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Passed. Okay, next we have an opportunity for public comment. And is there any, I know that we have a few people in the audience and they have specific interests in a couple of items. Is there anybody who has anything else that's they want to bring up that's not on the agenda? Talk about roads, garbage, anything like that. Move on to action items. The first is consideration of the Stout Drainage Report from the Township Engineer. I know we have a couple residents here, and when you got here tonight, there's a couple copies of a plan that's been laid out before you. It's a long plan. Long, the paper's cumbersome to deal with. And to the residents here on Stout, I'll just explain what it is. Oh, Mr. Van Oz is going to show it to you. So anyway, we have this plan, and the only thing of significance, I met with the engineers today, that I would point out is if you look at the upper drawing, there's an address 8199. That's not your address, is it? No. 8199, it's in the upper left-hand corner. John, can you see
I
it?
can see it, but if we all lay them out, get enough room.
All right, they got
I can
one.
see that.
All right. What happens is the bottom tier, the bottom tier runs from east to west. The westerly end of, there's about 11 homes where we have a problem, where the driveways have heaved because of the culverts freezing in the wintertime. Some of the drives have heaved severely. Look at the address of 8199 in the upper left-hand corner. You'll see that there's a buried manhole. See it? Everybody see it? Buried manhole? Well, indeed, that manhole is buried with about 2 feet of water, of earth. So that manhole is deep enough that if we were to lower the ditch in front of all these properties, between a foot or 2 feet, we can get into that manhole easily. And from that manhole, you'll see there's a 24-inch storm sewer that runs out of that manhole to the west. That's what we need to connect into. Now, if how many of you have, I know that Les and I have been up there, Ted and I have been up there, Jim and I have been up there, Ron Wilder and I have been up there, and Lorinda, John Keim. Has everybody been up there or no?
I haven't been up there, no.
I've been up there.
Phil, you haven't had an opportunity?
I've been up there.
Oh, you have been
Yeah,
up there, okay.
I drove up there.
All right. Well, so we're going to discuss this issue. What I want to point out, there's several driveways that are concrete, and they've heaved where the slabs are 3-4 inches apart, and a couple of driveways completely broken up. A couple of driveways are asphalt, and a couple of them heaved to the point where there's a big hump in the asphalt. They're cracked. A couple people have gravel driveways or stone that have heaved, and then there's a couple places where we would have to lower the culvert underneath the driveways where there's no problem with the driveway. So there's a mixture of treatment that has to take place here. So we'll move on from the drawing, which doesn't tell us a lot. Now what this is, we had asked the engineers to do a preliminary assessment shy of full engineering on this.
Yes, where's that 24 go?
Goes down to the ditch that goes across to Island Boulevard.
So if you look at in our packets, I gotta find it. We have a report from the engineers and it talks about the project, and we had a memo today to explain what would be done. Anyway, the engineers have said that they looked at several options. And to the people here in the audience, we intend to share this with you at some point, and at some point, I think soon, we would intend to meet, at least my opinion, meet with all the residents affected here. So they evaluated cleaning and regrading the existing road ditch, including cleaning the culverts. Well, that doesn't really do anything because the culverts need to be lowered. Removing and replacing the culverts and replacing the drive approaches as needed to improve the slope and lessen any restrictions. Deepening the ditches and relocating further away from the edge of the road due to the slope concerns, or enclosing the ditches. The recommendation of the engineers is to remove and replace the existing culverts, deepen the ditch by about a foot, and replace the driveway pavements. They say the area of concern is from 7903 Stout to 8337 Stout. About 1,100 feet of ditching would be required, 12 new culverts and end sections, and removing and replacing 12 driveways. Estimated cost, $148,000. You can all see the breakdown on the costs on page 21 of our report. The ditching work would be about $44,000. Replacing the drive culverts, 12 of them at $1,500 each, would be $18,000. Removing and replacing the driveways would be an estimated cost of $48,000, and removing and replacing the sewer would be $4,500. And then there's a subtotal, and then there's the permitting requirements and the engineering that would be necessary. Now, for a project like this, our own public services director, Lorinda Beneteau, has approached the county, and they've sent her back a response that they don't feel it's their responsibility. They won't do anything. That was their first response. Correct? Correct. So anyway, this is quite an expensive undertaking for us. my opinion is that we need to, what I'd like to see us do tonight is I'd like to see us ask the engineers to do a complete design for this. No later than our next meeting, bring it back. I think if we're going to fix this, this has to be fixed. That we should go out and get construction bids as soon as possible, get competitive bids. And if you think about it, we've already looked at this over a 2-month period from when it was first brought to our attention. Here it is, July. We need to get this done so that we're not doing it with frost in the ground, as far as I'm concerned. Now, this is expensive. I think we should try to meet with the county again to see if they will assist us and meet with all the property owners. The final comment I have is at my request, Lorinda sent a notice out about 2 months ago, 6 weeks ago anyway, to all the property owners and saying to them, please don't fix your driveways at this point because we're studying it, what to do. The last thing we wanted is for people to spend $3,000-$4,000 fixing their drive approaches, then have us come along and tear them back up. Bingo. We don't want to do that. So I also would tell you that I had the thought, and then we'll let the people speak, and then all of you. I personally had the thought that, this is a program that we inherited. I mean, we could say whose fault it is all over the place, whether it's the town, it's not the townships, or we could say it is, it's the counties. The ditch has been there that way a long time. Should the residents be responsible for some percentage of the drive approach repairs through some kind of an SAD where we let costs be spread over 5 years or something of that sort to help reduce the cost impact for us? Because you're really looking at about $12,000-$14,000 per house if you split it up that way. So, but we haven't taken actual bids. These estimates, engineers told me, are on the high side to cover everything. So anyway, at this point, I would just ask the commission if anybody else would like to speak to the issue, and then we'll open it up to the public. So I know, Ted, you have been up there and you've been concerned about this. Any comments you'd like to make?
When the people sitting in the audience came to visit me, they were very upset. They'd tried everything. They'd been out of the county. They'd talked to everybody they could. And I told them I would at least get involved to take a look and see what the issues were. So that goes way back. It's got to be 9 months ago. So Lorinda and I went over and looked at it. I took Ohio over there. We looked at it. And it's typical, government doesn't move real fast. I mean, we're trying to keep it moving, but it doesn't move really fast. We've determined there was a problem. There is an issue. I think we should go. I really believe the county needs to get involved in this in some form or fashion. They've exercised everything they can do with the county. County's just putting them off or won't even talk to them. So we need to flex as much muscle as we can with the county. If we can't get any assistance to the county, then we have to take some action on ourselves. I don't know exactly what this action is. I know that isn't fast enough. But like I said, it's government, and it moves at a pace that sometimes we're not happy with, but at least we're trying to, excuse me, at least we're trying to keep it moving forward. So if we approve the plans for Ohio to go ahead and do the preliminary, or do the work, the design, and get the estimates, then we've got something to take to the county and see if we can't get some kind of participation. Yours is not the only drain on the island that we have issues with, and that should be county responsibility. It's the typical frustration with the county, and we can't expect our residents to be left in the lurch because the county's not going to react to them. It's our job to do something, or as much as we can do anyway.
Okay. Les, do you have any comments on this at this point?
No.
Bill? No, we're gonna ask you to come up to John.
Les, I cannot remember the development of that street, but
It was Wisher.
how is that problem like the,
People
Dirt.
regrading their yards and filling the ditches in, and Some of the culverts weren't deep enough, and then when frost heaved them, they came up. The hard winter we had the last 2 years with the frost
This
really
has been,
plays heck on those culverts.
now, this has been going on a lot longer than that.
Oh, yeah.
But I think the primary issue is that probably the initial design wasn't followed through on. Probably. I don't know that for a fact.
Some of those houses were built 25 years ago, 30 years ago, and then others were developed
Right.
before that.
And then Wayne County came out to do a repair, and they actually dug the ditch the wrong way. That was their repair.
They headed it east.
Yeah, they headed east with it. I guess when we got involved, we found out what the problem was. We took a look at the original design, because Ohio had original plans for this. We looked at the original design, and the correct fix is going west, picking up the storm drain that's there and carrying it out of the area.
Don't create another problem.
No, then we're doing what they should have done in the first place. And I say I'm hoping we can get the county's participation, not just on this drain. There's a couple more that we have to deal with. So, but we got to carry the ball here to an extent. If at some point in time the township board or this commission feels that it should be a joint effort, or at least some participation in a assessment group or something, we can talk about that. But we need to get the first steps out of the way so we know what it's going to cost in the first place.
Okay, I agree.
I just want to keep the train going forward.
Jim, anything? No comment. Jim?
Yeah, a couple of things. Do you know, or Lorinda, do you know in the breakdown, the 34,000 contingency, I assume, is about 10%?
I think it's 15.
Is it 15? That makes it a little better.
And then there's
What
costs.
about the permitting?
That's included in here.
Yeah, how much? Do you know?
I don't know.
know?
Normally, the county would eventually waive the permits.
That's what it
The
might.
problem is the time that the county normally takes to get a permit to do something like this. I asked the question, and it was about.
All right. With that in mind, I mean, it seems to me that, we do have to work to try and get them involved. If not, Ted, I think this is one of those that we'll put on the list that of the bills that we're covering for the county, and show it to them down the road. But we as Ted said, it really doesn't matter whose it is. We have to help the residents out. So let's keep it moving.
Okay, so with that, those are our comments. I'd invite the two of you to come up to the podium and introduce yourselves. I know you're on Stout. And please state your names, and you can make a presentation, make your comments.
Good evening. I'm Marcy Tarziers. I'm one of the homeowners. I'm on 8031 Stout, if you look at your map. We are one of the driveways that are graveled. We realized that when we moved out here in 98, this island is a swamp. It made no sense to put in a cement approach to the driveway. Made no sense. You're a swamp. You're going to have the heaving and the cooling because of the fact you have clay, and you're a swamp. So, needless to say, this has been going on longer than just 2 years. This has been going on for the better part of 5 years. We first went to appeal the tax assessment on our property when this this project really first took hold, in the fact that I think at that time the federal government had issued some funds for remediation for water control on the properties and drainage in regards to homeowners. If you look between us, 8031 and 8041, what happens is because there is the angle, theirs has been up, whereas we have sunk so bad that the mailbox now leans in towards the sewer. I have no way to straighten out that mailbox now. Pretty soon the mailman is going to have to drive into the ditch in order to put the mail in the mailbox. So the next step is probably they're going to stop delivering the mail. What happens is when we have severe rains in a downpour, the water, because their culvert is in a much smaller diameter than ours is, since the county came out the first time and did their scooping out and their blowing and gave us the pat on the head, oh, Mr. Taxpayer, here we came out and gave you something. The water, the volume is larger coming out of our culvert than theirs. So what it does is it hits their driveway, backs up, and goes in between our homes. And it ends up going into the back of their yard, and it stays wet continually through there. You can't mow. If you drive past our house today, you will see that there are cattails growing in the culvert. Cattails don't grow unless they're standing water. Now the problem has escalated to the point that after the county came out in 2011 and did their so-called repair and made the water try to flow east on the side of the driveway, I now have the gut going in there, and I have mosquitoes. I know there's money by the feds for mosquito abatement to the counties. I suggest that you look into their money for that, to go towards them paying for this. I have called the county every day for the better part of 3 months trying to get a hold of the county maintenance supervisor who's responsible for our area.
What's their name?
You would ask me that. All my notes are back at my... Yeah, it was Hodges, Duke Hodges. And after 4 or 5 conversations, he basically, the bottom line he told me is, we know what the problem is, we know what the fix is, and it's too expensive, and we're not going to do it. The county's in a financial bind. Well, you know, we all got to go to work. I'm your customer. I pay their salaries. I contribute to it. This township pays more per capita in taxes than anybody else in this county. And I think we deserve a little bit of respect. And I appreciate the fact that some of you are going to be willing to advocate for us in order to get this done. If you need something else for us to do, to go to the county, whether it go to the county, our county supervisor, our commissioner was just happy to just fawn us off. If you need me to go downtown and talk to a county commission meeting, I'll be happy, because I don't go away easily. My job is to follow up and to make sure that things are done on a timely basis in my job at Ford Motor Company. So it's not anything out of my realm.
Was it Marcy or Margie?
Marcy.
Marcy.
Yes.
Marcy, you said you talked to our Commissioner Palmera?
Yes. He's the one that gave me Mr. Hodges' name in the first place. That had to be in late 2011 or early 2012. And we have repealed the taxes. We've come down here and tried to protest the assessments. We came down just this last year, and basically it was just like, well, okay, too bad, so sad. You're on your own. All right. We put the house taxes in escrow, which is how we came into Mr. Van Oz's presence, is because we were going to put the taxes in escrow in order to force the county's hand. And evidently they've got themselves so covered in the legislative body that it doesn't matter. They're going to get paid no matter what. And we're going to be stuck in the bill. And they work for us. Yes. What question can I answer for you?
Would the gentleman like to speak? Was that your husband?
Want to say something? Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sure he's got plenty to say.
My name is Cass Ronowitz, and the first time when this problem came up, we had a lot of rain, and so much rain that it backs up, like I said, into the driveway. My driveway is sunk 14 inches at the one end, and then it goes back up. And I finally got hold of the county, and then they had a guy come out, Lonnie Lee. He was like the supervisor
Right, we know who he is.
on 4th Street. And then he came over to talk to me, and he said, well, I'll have a break next week, and I'll probably be able to come over there. Well, they did come over. They scooped out the ditch and all that stuff, and they put in those big black, kind of what the heck they call them, the big black.
Culvert?
Some kind of black pipe, okay?
Right.
It's plastic or some damn thing. And he did a good job, and he said, next door has to be, in the next 2 or 3 homes, and he did a eyesight. They all need to be lowered so the water will flow. And he's right. Okay, so then for a while, a couple of years, things weren't too bad. But I still had water backing up on the west side because of the next guy's, what do we call it, the pipe, and the thing was always up higher. And his grass grows in there and it sort of stops the flow. So I kept complaining, and finally another crew came out there. We came home from a 4-day vacation. Oh, somebody was sure to work on this thing. Guess what they did? They took that thing out, and they cracked it. They had to come back on Monday, put a belly band on it, and they said they changed the angle. I says, what for? So they changed the angle, and I got water standing on both sides of that pipe. That's how smart those guys were. What do you do?
Okay.
My comments.
All right, so, thank you very much. Marcy, before you leave tonight, will you make sure you write down for Lorinda your contact information, unless she already has it, and phone numbers and so forth? I'm thinking that when the engineers come out to do the field work, to do the final design, they should talk with you.
I believe so.
Okay.
I think it's only right on there that since we have to live with it on a regular basis, I think we have a good idea. I actually have video on a camera of what happens when we have one of those terrain
All right.
happens and how it backs up. So if they need any other kind of evidence, I've got it for them.
Sounds like, we've been looking at the ditch and the culverts and lowering it, but I don't know how that impacts this other drainage problem you mentioned on your
Well,
property. So.
it's just because theirs is higher than ours because we've sunk the 14 inches
Well,
in over those
that's why I
years.
say the engineers
That
should-
creates an amount of force coming back, and it has nowhere to go except in between the homes. That's,
If we lower the ditch, there's a possibility we could put an inlet in that would allow the surface drainage.
I'm
to-
happy if you guys put a big old sewer right there in front of my house. I don't care.
Okay.
Because you're going to have road bed. I'm already starting to see some cracks in the road bed around there. So it's going to end up being in a road bed problem here sooner or later because it backs up, because of the volume backing up our way, it goes out over the road and backs up over the road. So you get the road hazards in there from the improper drainage.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, on the drainage, I'm going to propose that we entertain a motion tonight to authorize Rains Engineering to come back with a completed plan no later than our next meeting. Be ready to go out to bids. That's one thing. The next thing is, I think we should, there's a couple of other drainage issues that I learned about last night. So I think that we should have a committee of people available to try to meet with the county. And I'm not talking about Duke Hodges alone, maybe him, but I think the so-called Ken Cusell is a gentleman who used to run the road engineering department. Ken is now the so-called drain commissioner. Good guy. I'd like to get Ken to come out here and meet with us, talk about our drainage issues. And I propose the committee, since they're available, would be Ted, Jim Budney, and myself, if that's okay with everybody. We're here. I mean, they're here. I can be here. And we can talk drainage. What happened last night, I was at the township board meeting, and there's some good news. We'll talk about that in a minute. But a family came in and talked about a drainage problem. And can somebody describe exactly where it is? Can you?
What street?
Well, it's in it's off
It's on
between West
Meridian.
River and Meridian.
Right, between West River, next to Miles' property.
Miles' property is down by the new street where the homes are going up. Potawatomi. Everybody know where Potawatomi is? So apparently they're
Miles, you got some acreage there.
Gordon Miles does?
Wyandotte Woods.
Last night was the first night I heard about it.
Oh, that's the first time you heard about it? So what they're alleging is that an old drain that shows up on old maps that ran across several properties that drains towards the Trenton Channel has been filled in, and the property is underwater, and it won't drain. So that's an issue we need to try to get a solution to. And if we have to re-ditch something across country, the counties, that's their responsibility, I would think. But anyway.
Is this-
It's typical. They were going to the county with this. Finally, they just got frustrated.
Well, the county has great alls to do ditching, and maybe they don't want to use them. Maybe it takes too long to start them up. By the time they get out here, they got to go on break or something. I don't know. At any rate,
Is this the ditch that goes from Meridian all the way to West River Road?
Yes, I can't answer you.
It's now blocked up and not flowing.
Well, there's another one. There was a gentleman in the audience that was here about the road bond issue from West River Road, and I think he was probably leaning more towards wondering, what are you going to do to West River Road? And so he hung around. Mr. Loftus said, Mr. Kostick's sitting right there. He'll tell you about what you're going to do on West River. So the good news on the West River, after I explained to him what we were going to do, explained how we were going to approach different drainage issues on it, the drainage from the east side to the west side of West River, he gave me his name and phone number and said he'll work on a citizens committee in favor of the bond issue. So that's good. But he also said, I got a foot of water in my backyard. Got the same problem, an old ditch that's been filled in and it doesn't drain. So I told him I'd come out and look at that. So we got a couple of new drainage issues, quite different than what you have. These are cross backyards or back fields versus in the road. So I think we should collect all this information and get the right people from the county to sit down. It seems like the county maintenance people, the only word they know is no, not yes. And they have never participated in all these years on any drain project. I think we need to go a little bit higher and put some people on the spot.
Right.
Right.
Could I volunteer to be on the committee?
Sure, you can
You can say no.
do it if you want to be on the committee during the day.
It's fine. I won't golf that day.
Okay, if you want to, okay, you can be on the committee, and I'll be your substitute, in case you're not.
I'm available.
Got that, Lorinda? So we're going to form this informal committee, but I'd like a motion to authorize the engineers to do a full-scale design ready for bids by our next meeting.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported that we adopt the resolution asking our engineers, based on this stout preliminary drawing, to do the full engineering plan, cost estimate, ready for bids, and report back to us at our next meeting.
Bill, I had a question.
Yep.
To be fair to the people on Stout, kind of addresses here, does that cover a reasonable scope of the problem, or are we getting somebody's address?
No, these are not complainers. This is.
No, well, my point is, if we're gonna do something here, I wanna treat everybody on Stout the same way. So if there's somebody and their number is not on this list of 10, and they have a real drainage problem, just like you do, then I think we should probably be fair to them too. That's my point.
In my mind, from having lived there and going
Well, it encompasses, it begins to the east where the driveways have crumbled.
right.
And you're more to the west side of it. So it's pretty visible.
I think you're right in asking to put a call out. Resident, and you're on Stout, and you have problems, you need to call them.
Now, as opposed to
Absolutely, they should speak.
shoemaker's job.
John, if you go up there, you can check yourself, but we did that when we went up to look at it. Identified the properties that have a problem where we need to lower the ditch. We already did that.
If you go there when it's wet, that's the best indicator. That's my question is, oh, I'm hearing a yes. That's a reasonable question, and I'm hearing yes.
There may be others down.
Well,
I can only attest to what happens from my property to houses either way.
we'll transfer.
On my drainage by what happens on the other side of the street as well.
All right, we'll transfer that request to the engineers, but I've been up there with them, and I'm pretty certain that this does encompass the area. If you want to speak anymore, please come up to the microphone. All right, so we have a motion. Your support. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 So we're going to proceed with that. And at our next meeting, which is a month from tonight, we're going to receive a full report. Now, I had a thought. At some point, we have to keep the residents informed of what's going on. As I said earlier, the last thing we want to do is have people go fix their drives. If I were a couple of those concrete drives, I'd be very frustrated. One of them is hardly usable. And I think you're talking complete failure, 4 or 5 inches lips on where the concrete. Pretty bad. Should we invite the residents to come into the next meeting in August?
Up to,
If you want to address us, you have to. But I asked a question to the commission. Just let me get an answer. Do you,
I think we can communicate in writing to these people.
all right, so that's probably a better idea. All right, so what we'll do is maybe sometime in the next week, Lorinda, you could send a letter out to the residents saying we've authorized full engineering. We'll have an analysis within the next 45 days or so. We'll keep you advised. Something like that. Is that fair? Now you can speak.
Well, I'm just want to bring a point like the house on the east side that just got sold, but they never have that problem there. The ditches, whatever. There's never any big water problem there. That's what bugs the heck out of me.
East of you,
Yes, right next door, right.
it's on this map. Do they have a gravel driveway?
No, he's got cement, a circular drive that goes right to the road, and his cement's sitting there perfect,
Yeah.
not broken.
I noticed right in the middle of all this, there's one driveway, or there's an asphalt drive too. I don't think that's Eve. One has and one hasn't. Well,
But the one next to that house, I don't know what happened, but the driveway, actually, the cement has come up.
oh yeah, I know.
If you go by, you'll see that. It's a circular
Frost is
drive.
blowing it up, right?
Right near over the culvert part, it just hunks of cement.
Right.
I don't know how that happens, but it does.
Okay. So is there anything else we should do on this at this point? On the drain issues, I'll work with it. I think the township manager needs to be involved. So Lorinda will work with the township manager and try to choose a date when Mr. Nelson's available. Okay. Next item. Well, what I'd like to propose is Joe Keefe has brought in some guests. And I'd like Joe to introduce everybody, but let's change the agenda around a little bit if you don't mind, and move up the wastewater treatment plant power monitoring. Let him make a presentation. Is everybody okay with that? Sure. Not hearing any objections. So Joe, why don't you introduce everybody, and you've got the floor.
Okay. I brought Jason McManus is operator for me. He works with United Water at the plant. He's also fireman and longtime island resident, 20-some years. And we've had electrical issues, which I explained back at the May meeting about power monitoring. And he's watched this stuff. And Dave Lawler is also a fireman, Groseal Fire Department. And so, but he's a manufacturer's rep for electrical supply. He worked for Eaton at one time, and other manufacturer reps. But anyway, they were talking, and so Dave said, well, I can come in with a meter, and, we can just try to see what's going on, because we have these earth faults, where pumps, variable frequency drives get knocked out, other unexplained things. So Dave brought in a meter and actually had it there for about 3 weeks total. Mm-hmm. But he's the expert on this stuff, and he can explain way better than I can as to what he found. But he knows what happened, and that's why I said this is something we may want to consider, is putting a power monitor unit in so that when these things happen, we can notify Edison and say, this is happening at this time, and it's where they switch transformers, from one, if there's an increase in voltage demand, things like that. And they make switches, and it sends us.
Does power come from out here, from those transformers, those three transformers? Or does it come off?
I'm not sure if it comes straight down West River from the cables that come across. I couldn't tell you.
Should be coming from the substation.
All right, so Dave, you got the floor.
Yes.
I'm assisting.
No, he's
Okay, so basically they told me about the problems that they were having. And let's see here. Ted. There we go. Okay. So we're going to use my handy dandy laptop. Again, I'm a manufacturer's rep for different power quality related products. I learned my trade in the Coast Guard, where I was electronics technician for a lot of years. I'm not a double E, but I know enough to be dangerous, and I also know when to say, ask the guys that have the degrees. So we're just going to kind of start with the basics. One of the things that the utility does is they guarantee you that they're going to give you a certain voltage. Okay, in the case of the water treatment plant, it's 480 volts, and it's plus or minus 10%. Some cases plus or minus 5%, and they have a certain window of time to get it back into that voltage range. So when you start having a problem with voltage, which is primarily the thing that you're going to call them about, first thing everybody does is, something screws up at the plant, call Edison, it's their problem. Well, I hate to tell you, about 75% of the time, it's actually in the facility. It's not the utility itself giving it to you. All right, so that's kind of where having be the treatment plant, be Kroger's, be your house.
Okay.
75% of the time, it's something going on where you're using the power that's causing the problem, not what Edison's giving to you. Okay? And if you ever, have enough of an issue and you continue to call your rep, they'll come out, they'll put one of their power monitors on at what's called the point of common coupling, or right where the meter's at. And it'll be on there for a month, and then they'll come back and they'll say, we didn't find anything wrong with it. You don't get the data. You don't know what happened. You don't know what they caught. Mysteriously, the problem might go away. You'll see a truck that shows up 2 weeks later, but yet when they come back to you, they didn't catch anything. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. So a lot of customers with industrial or critical loads will install their own meters at the building service entrance on this side of the point of common coupling on the customer side. And the nice thing about having that meter is now I own the data. So if I come in the morning and something happened, all I got to do is sit down on my computer, hit rewind, and I can see exactly what happened, whether I lost a phase and everything kicked out, or you name it. The other benefit of it is now that you have a meter installed there, you can keep an eye on your own power. So say your power factor correction capacitors that you need to save you money on your electric bill, they fail. Instead of finding out a month or 2 months later when Lorinda gets the bill and says, why did the utility cost go up 10%? You'll know the next day that something happened. So there's twofold on it, of finding power quality events, and then there's keeping track of your own energy. Not to mention if you want to do energy savings type things. You want to try something different in the plant, and you want to be able to find out if it actually does save me 20%. With metering. You either do it with a permanent meter or you do a portable meter. What we ran across was I had the meter on there for 3 weeks because I didn't have anybody else screaming for the demo. They had a ton of events the week before I put it on, and they haven't had an event since. A significant event. So that's the nature of putting a portable on. Never fails. The day after I pull it off, something will happen. All right, so that's kind of the difference when you're looking at metering. All right, so what I just wanted to what we started off with was just trying to see what level of metering that might work for you. What kind of events are you getting? All right, so what we have here, this is from the second week of monitoring. All right, and this is just the current. And we're just looking at the average current usage. Okay? Here's going to be the voltage. Now, if you look right up in here, I've got these lovely little things of this is my average voltage, this is my minimum, this is my maximum. The plant should be at 480 volts. All right, Edison's got you guys a little hot. That's something that Joe is already aware of. So you're a little bit high on voltage. And the reason that they do that is because we have so many mixed uses on these circuits now, because they're the only industrial plant there. So 90% of the rest of the load on that circuit is residential. It's going to be two phases. It's going to go, when they all turn their air conditioners on, it's going to go down. So that kind of is how they kind of balance stuff out. So But if you notice, over an entire 1 week period, we never varied more than, let's see, 7 volts. Okay, well within what Detroit Edison says they'll give you of 10% or 5%. All right, so from a voltage point of view, everything's kind of steady. There's no surprises. All right, what we did catch during it was 2 things. Now, first off, you guys have power factor correction capacitors installed in there. There's 300 kVAR of power factor correction capacitors there. Only 100 kVAR of them are turned on. The reason that is you don't need all of it. You used to need all that power factor correction. Now you only need 100 kVAR, and you actually need a little bit less. One of the things that is dangerous is having too much power factor correction capacitors turned on to where we start going what's called leading power factor. Has anybody up there ever heard how we explain power factor with a glass of beer? All right, I was going to bring my glass of beer here for you, but I figured there was probably some rule. All right, so if you look at a glass of beer on a commercial or industrial utility bill, which is what you are. All right, when you go to the bar and you order a beer, all right, waitress pours it, you got just a little bit of head on it, life is good, mostly beer. All right, if they're changing the kegs out and it spits, you get this much head and this much beer. Well, if we think about beer as a weight or equates to power, there's certain things in power. There's kW that everybody's used to paying for on your utility bills, or watts. That's the part that actually does the work. The foam is called VA, volt amps. And that's basically the part of a load that takes the power from the utility to energize an electric field and then gives it back. So the utility can't bill for it because you're just borrowing it. Okay? They don't like that because they have to have capacity there. They have to have turbines spinning to be able to supply it. So they have the right to impose a penalty if you get too much foam. And that's what the power factor correction capacitors do, is instead of borrowing it from the utility, you're borrowing it from the caps themselves there. So that's how we keep our power factor high. That way the utility's happy. They don't sit there and hit you with a 20% penalty, if you start getting too low. The limit is about 0.82 on your bill?
0.85.
0.85 is where you're assessed a penalty. Without your power factor correction capacitors on, you're at about a 0.62. Okay? So, all well and good. We haven't been getting penalties for a year. But the dangerous part is there's certain loads at the plant that we're trying to identify why that are taking the power factor leading. And what happens when it goes leading is the voltage starts to climb up. If the generator is to try and transfer into that, all right, the voltage regulator in the generator doesn't like it, and it's going to go run away on you. All right, so that's something that I've talked to Joe about, and he's got information on how to address of putting in an automatic bank. And what that does is it only puts in the amount of capacitance that you need. When the generator goes to start, it's going to pull it all off, so we don't have to worry about any of that being a problem. But as you can see, normally we try and correct the utility or the power factor to about a 9.2, 9.5. In this, I'm at about a 0.95. But if I go to VAR, which is what the capacitors are, this is the zero line. These are the parts that we get nervous about, because this is where the voltage is going to climb when they're in there. So I got additional about 20 to 25 kVAR that we don't need in for certain periods of time. And that could be adding to some of the power quality problems in the plant. Okay? So like I said, only about 25% or less come from the utility. The rest of them you create, you deal with, and when the gremlins get in there, Lord help you. All right. The other thing that we caught during it were these. These are transients. And I'll show you them, but I just want to sit there and kind of give you an overview. If you look at the dates and the times, You're going to see a bunch of them at 6:01 and 6:46 every day. Now, we have torn that plant apart looking for anything that's on a timer that automatically turns on at 6:01 or at 6:46. And we can't find anything at the plant. All right? So in my experience, that's normally what it is it's probably a power factor correction capacitor bank that the utility's using, and it's on a timer. And ironically, if we waited till daylight savings time, you would see those times shift an hour. So what we actually caught during it, how did I get lucky enough to get a good example right off the top? Okay. Everybody's used to what an AC sine wave looks like, correct? Nice and pretty, flowing up and down. All right. What we've got here is not a pretty sine wave. This is just phase A during this transient. And what the transient is I had a meter on there that does kind of two different things. It trends all the information that we wanted. So we got to see all the voltage, and it's taken 512 samples a cycle, and it's giving me 1 second averages, and it's displaying it. So I get to see what Edison's giving us. Then it's got another little circuit that kind of lies in wait for something that is greater than 50 volts is what I set the threshold. So anything that is different than a 50 volt window that was around that sine wave. And this is what we kind of caught at 6:01, 6:46. And what this is indicative of is, basically Edison having some problems with the power factor correction capacitor bank. Right? If you can see it, this is phase 2. So you've got, this is the voltage. See these? That's the current. Now what it also kind of equates to is the same time that they have their ground faults. So what happens is the voltage waveform is notching out so bad from this little power factor correction switch that you're seeing in one cycle. So that's 16 milliseconds of power. It's enough to kick the drive out on ground fault. I can't 100% prove it, because we're not sitting there and watching them at the same time. This is coming back with something that's date time stamped, and then they're going back and figuring out what they're having to reset and things of that nature. Okay? This is something that you can bring to the attention of Detroit Edison and say, you might have a problem. And your account rep will sit there and say it, and they might send a line crew out and fix it. Okay? But this is kind of showing the difference in metering. In order to capture this, I'm at about a $10,000 power quality meter. Okay? To catch the other stuff, I'm at a $2,500 power quality meter. So that's kind of why we wanted to look at what events you had coming through as to what do we really have to worry about. Now these, they're causing ground faults. There's some other stuff that we caught when we were walking around of surge suppression that had failed during an over voltage condition that happened a while ago. No surge suppression at the service entrance now. So that's something that we'd recommend adding because we do see that we're getting events like that. Okay, so I've given them some options of different meters. They all have built-in memory. They all have built-in web servers, so you don't have to be running any kind of software in order to get this information. Because also the network at the site isn't, it's in the plan for the SCADA system upgrade in a couple of years, is my understanding. But right now it's not like, your 10-year-olds probably have, your home network set up a lot more advanced than theirs is, unfortunately. But the memory, the communication, and everything's there to be able to pull that information over, archive it, and come in the next morning and find out exactly a date time stamp of when it happened, and this is what we do with it. So that's kind of, there's some things going on there. We can't blame them all on the utility. There's some we can point out to them, but if you had your own power monitoring there, we can definitely use the information to make better decisions with cost savings, with everything, or finding out why stuff is continuing to happen. there any other questions? I'm trying to keep this
Well,
short and low.
Yeah, Dave, does this affect our equipment?
This
The
stuff,
plant?
very much so.
Can you explain how?
Well, with spikes and transients, I mean, you're looking at, where a drive is expecting a certain zero current crossing. And the reason that the drives are kicking out is because all of a sudden they're seeing, hey, I'm supposed to be here, why am I here? So now the drive is sitting there trying to compensate for it, and you start getting these huge current inrushes. So there is damage to the equipment if I keep hitting it with that over time. Transients are what we call electronic rust. There's two types of transients. There's lightning hit the pole, call the fire department, because it's going to put a whole lot of voltage in there and we're going to have a whole lot of stuff to fix. There's stuff like this that it isn't going to blow the wires off the side of the building, but over time, I'm still going to kill the equipment. Okay, so that's why we have different levels of power quality equipment that we put in. First step is surge protection. You already have one in one section of the plant that's failed. And then why it wasn't put in at the building service entrance, whereas normally IEEE recommends that we put it at the building service entrance, the secondary side distribution panels, and then all the way down at the point of utilization. It just got lost. That's the easiest stuff. We can put surge suppression in there for $1,500. But, it's the first line of defense. Then you get into the voltage issues and things of that nature, and that's where we have to identify them, and then a lot of it's Edison.
Questions from anybody else?
Nice presentation.
Thank you, sir.
So, thanks, Dave. Jason, would you like to speak? Or?
So if anybody has any questions about what I caught, the nice thing about this is all this data I'm giving to Joe. So he will have all this information, again, when Detroit Edison comes out to verify it, they keep the data, and you'll never know what was really going on. With this, hey, it was a chance for me to show off my meters and see if I could fix some stuff. I tend to like doing investigative stuff like this. It's fun.
Well, thank you.
Not to mention I'm saving my own tax dollars.
Well, thank you, Dave.
Water
Joe?
bills, too.
So, where we don't have a lot of questions because probably some of it went over our heads, but
We tried to keep it simple, but that's why I brought him in.
What's the cost factor? So we're talking $2,500 up to $10,000?
$10,000
That's the spectrum.
for the power monitoring, yes.
This is, if you want to take a look, this is the one surge suppressor that we caught that was cooked, and this was from a temporary overvoltage. This wasn't a big surge. This was, the voltage went high in the building and it just slow cooked it. That's what happens to them. They're not designed for, they're designed for a lot of energy for a short period of time, not a lot of energy and stays there. And it's, if you want to say it, we let the magic smoke out. So it probably made a nice little bit.
did we have to replace this then?
We do have to. We found that it was dead.
He just found it. It was, there's nothing in the system to tell us, this thing went. It was just, he was looking to see how our power was configured, and he was popping open and he spotted that.
See, this is the power factor correction capacitors I was talking about. The top one is 100 kVAR. That's the one that's on. There's 200 kVAR down here that we have off. And this 100 kVAR, if we could mysteriously make it like 77 kVAR, we'd be in good shape. Provided it shut off when the generator tried to transfer. Mm-hmm. These guys all know that if they have to manually transfer the generator, they have to shut the caps off. And then this is the transfer switch. This is where we'd basically install the metering on that, right on that bus.
This is all the stuff that went in a year and a half ago. When we did the automatic transfer switch, Ferndale Electric.
All right, so where do you want to go with this, Joe?
I will look at the power monitor meters and try to pick out the best one, but I think that would be a good capital investment for the plant so that we can have a better understanding of what's going on. So I will come back with some pricing and a recommendation and leave it up to you.
How much equipment have we lost due to these power fluctuations? And other than
well,
the
there's that.
other than the nuisances. Well, we assume that was from a continual high voltage
Yeah.
condition, but we don't know that.
We again, without monitoring, we have no way of knowing. We've lost our two programmable logic controllers for the process water system. Those were both replaced this past winter.
Cost?
About $2,000 a piece, plus installation. 'Cause
Now, is that spike related or continual power fluctuation related?
I couldn't, that's more of a question for him than me.
With the issues that we've caught this recently, and then also the other ones that they told me about, it's going to be a combination of both. It's going to be the overvoltage conditions. It's going to be the spikes and transients over time. You just can't sit there and just keep beating on this stuff. It's going to fail. It only takes so much abuse. But unfortunately, I don't have a magic bullet to say this is what killed it or this is what killed that. Sure. It's going to be a combination of just these few little things that we spotted are my tattletales as to what's going on over time.
The point I'm trying to make is the commission as laymen need to have justification to spend anything. And if it's just because it's a pain in Joe's rear end, live with it. If it's going to save equipment and the cost of the equipment it's going to save is going to justify the purchase of this equipment, then we certainly have to look at it.
Very
and that's
much
what
so.
the answer I'm trying to get here.
No, we have quite a bit of electronic equipment, the variable frequency drives, the programmable logic controllers. Another one we just replaced was the one for the raw sewage pumps, and that was $2,700 or so in that ballpark. So these
So
things,
everybody gets an idea of the kind of costs that if you don't monitor and protect, there is a risk there.
And Joe, if we had the monitors, you would be able to read them and understand them.
yes. I mean, comes to an
you could
owner's
look at the data.
manual.
You would be able to look at
Yeah.
the data and see something's wrong and be able to trace.
Or I could call in, Newport Electric, who basically is our almost on-staff electricians. They would be able to tell me, what's this, and he would be able to tell me what's going on there. So, yes, sir.
Joe, I have a question. And Dave, you mentioned the transients, and you have the data. Let's just take that one situation. What would be done to correct that? I mean, knowing that you have transients is fine, but making them go away is what you're going to want to do, correct?
On that one, it's going to, because on that specific one, it's from Detroit Edison. It's a switching transient that they're giving you. If you sit there and you look at it from the Michigan Public Service Commission and what they're required to give you for power, they can give you that all day long. Because they're responsible for the voltage being in here. They can give you those switching transients. Making them aware that it's causing you problems is how you're going to get it fixed.
Yeah.
And they just need to, and I run into this in more, ironic that I run into it in more wastewater treatment plants I get called in, where it's the utilities power factor correction capacitors are having problems, and they're not aware of it. And then
So
you're
of the opinion that enough presentations of those transients to the source, they're going to make them go away.
If you keep,
Yeah, if you have the evidence, they will do their part to try to make it go away.
Okay.
And my experience has been, like on the over voltages, which he didn't catch any, but we have had in the past, when that was brought to their attention, they went away for a while.
Yeah, I mean, we can collect all sorts of data. I want to know we're collecting data we can do something
Yes.
with and make
again,
changes with.
remember where I drew that dividing line? 75% of the problems you're going to catch with a meter are going to be inside the facility.
Correct. And we can do
the other
something about that.
25 is where we can sit there and make Edison aware of it and say, get in here, and knowing that their process is going to be, they're going to put their meter out there anyways because they're not going to trust your data. But at least you know that there's a process, and unfortunately you have to sit there and kind of prove it to them to where we think it's your problem. We've already eliminated everything in here. You know, it's out there. You're giving it to us. You have to convince them to actually come out and do it. But once they're made aware, usually the problem gets corrected immediately.
Thank you.
I just,
Do they make I know they do, but what's available for power filters coming into a plant like that?
Oh, I can supply anything.
I
Voltage
realize that.
regulators, just simple isolation transformers, UPS systems. We kind of look at power quality as a pyramid. You know, we start off with grounding and isolation as the first thing. Everything's kind of built on that. Then we start with surge suppression. And as you go up, the dollars per kW go up.
Sure, absolutely. But
So, I mean, we can sit there and completely protect, but it just kind of depends on the problems that you're having, the cost of what the net effect is on me, and how important is me to fix, or is it to fix it, and then we can put it in there. So, in this case, from what I've captured, taking care of the power factor correction and making Edison aware that they're giving you switching transients and installing and replacing surge suppression should get you at the adequate level of protection based on what I saw during that 3-week period. If anything else comes up with having another, your own meter installed, then we kind of go from there. But, luckily we're still down at the bottom of the pyramid of dollars per kW.
Yeah, but if we can correct the problem, we don't need to monitor the problem.
I would still monitor because everything changes. The plant, every time they upgrade a system, they put in a new variable frequency drive. The whole nuances of the facility change. Every time Edison lets something degrade, they don't go out and maintain it. You've got a new thing. So every facility is always changing. And then it's not a bad idea to have a permanent meter in there. Or you can hire somebody like me to come in and put a portable on and give you a report and analysis and make a recommendation once a year or whatever. There's different companies that do that. But when you look at the cost, for the study that I did, I normally get about $2,000 a week. And we did 3 weeks. So that'll give you an idea of what a power quality audit would cost you. Sure. If we can put a meter in for the same cost, and then you own the data and you have everything real time, where I can come in the next morning and say, oh, on the SCADA, it kicked out at 602. And you hit the power meter and said, oh, at 602, I lost phase A by 15%. Then I call up and I yell at Edison.
I guess I'm trying to justify in my mind, if you have a power monitoring device there and you come in on Monday morning and 6 of your motors are fried, you'll know what fried them, but they're still fried.
Yes. It's not going to do anything to stop it. It's just going to tell you what happened.
And that's my point.
Instead of we have to come in and try and do an educated guess of I put a portable meter in and nothing happens for 3 months.
I got it.
And then the day I pull it off, 6 more motors fry. We run into this all the time. So it's nice to be able to hit rewind, but it is a capital expense that has no return on investment. You put a meter in, if you don't do anything with the information, thank you very much for the order, but I can't show you a return on investment like I could with power factor correction of you're getting billed $1,800 a month. I put this in, that goes away, and you pay for it in 14 months. And then everything's free and clear. I can't show you a return on investment on surge suppression, on the metering. It's a peace of mind thing.
the one point I want to make is, as we've been upgrading the plant over the years, bringing in like the new process water system that went in 2009. The other stuff was, big dummy stuff with hydraulic drives to, maintain. Everything now is electronic. Everything has a brain. It's all programmable logic controllers. and variable frequency drives. The basin pumps are all, VFD drives. So more and more sensitive electronic stuff is coming into the plant every time we make an upgrade. And the investment in that is what we're trying to protect and also figure out, if something does go wrong. And most of, VFDs have built-in protection. We come in and find, that pump hasn't run since 6:01 a.m. It shuts down. It doesn't fry the motor. So some of the stuff has protection, and again, return on investment, it's hard to predict. But it's good for us to know, is it coming from inside the plant? Is there something we need to do inside the plant? Or can I call Edison and say, this is happening at 6:01 every morning or every other morning or whatever it's been happening. Can you...
Is there something on your system?
Is there something on your system that's causing this? Can you, try to fix it?
From your explanation and from what I know, and I do know a little bit about it, it seemed to me that your minimum investment would be in monitoring. You should monitor. Your maximum investment should be in protection. Regardless of the cost, you need to identify what needs to be protected. And if you're going to spend capital bucks, capital dollars, big dollars, I would much rather see it in the protecting of the devices than having you tell you on Monday why it fried on Sunday. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Any other questions? If not, thank you, Dave.
My pleasure.
Joe,
Thank you.
Jason, your presentation was electrifying.
One more question. One more
comment then. Based on what
your day
Ted
job.
just said, I think we need to broaden the scope of what you're going to propose. Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to tell
Yeah, I
Well,
think that's
some-
what he's saying.
some of the
Rather
stuff-
than just the monitoring, I think he's looking at maybe
Well, the
moving
surge
up the
protection
pyramid a little bit.
that we've identified of adding a new surge protection device at the service entrance that isn't there, replacing the one that's failed, and continuing that whenever you sit there and do an upgrade to include surge suppression as part of it, because it's the least expensive of the pyramid. It gives us that first big warm fuzzy feeling. Okay, if we start running into other problems where we're losing phases and stuff's going, then we got other issues. But it'll be nice to have the information, because the one thing about variable frequency drives that they're notorious for is they have all these alarms and stuff in them, but they also all end up in catch-all alarms. So you could sit there and have the drive fault out, and it'll give you under voltage over current every time. Well, what was it? Because they're a racing type thing. Was it on all the phases? Was it on one phase? Was it a ground fault? They unfortunately fall into these catch-alls because they're just sitting there trying to protect themselves and give you an idea what's going on.
Yeah, but don't you think that if that condition existed, once in a while it happens. But if that condition exists, now you go into some heavy monitoring on that particular device at that particular time, unless it's all of them.
A lot of times I'll have them where they'll do that for a ground fault. They'll sit there and do an overcurrent.
Sure.
Or I lost all the power. You had the recloser type thing where you get the 3-strike and you're sitting there praying that the breaker resets that third time and you keep your lights and you don't have to sit there and wait for Edison to go out and find out what's got it. Those alarms are extremely generic. So when you actually have the power quality monitoring, you could sit there and say, well, yeah, we sat there and the power flashed at my house 3 times and then went out. So that's what those alarms were versus I lost a phase.
Well, again, I would much rather spend a couple of $1,000s monitoring and $10,000 fixing than $10,000 monitoring and still spending $10,000.
Personally, I don't think we need to go to the $10,000
Right.
meter,
Well,
but
I'm
I gave
just-
it as the range.
So
I
we
don't
need
to
that
do transient capture
information
or whatever else.
That information needs to come back to us.
Yeah.
So this commission can make a decision that makes sense, because we're talking capital money here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on. Next item on our agenda is item number 2 under action items. Consideration of the November 3rd major road capital improvement bond issue. And I want to report to the commission that last night, if you haven't heard already, our township board, thanks to Ted and Mr. Budney, unanimously approved placing our bond proposal on the ballot. In the report you have the exact language of how the proposal will read. It's on page 23. Before the yes/no, that's the bond proposal. So if you read it carefully, what it does say is that what I want to point out to you is that if this is approved, based on the bonds that we would issue initially approximately $14 million of bonds in 2016, and then again in 2018 we would issue $4,800,000. The cost the first year in 2016 would be equivalent to 1.1 mils, and the average after that would be 2.1 mils. Now, the derivation of that, I want to just point out to you, if you go to chart on page 28, both the bond counsel and the financial advisor put these schedules together. Shows you the debt that would be issued. So if this is a key page for you to become familiar with. What I wanted to point out to you is that the series, if you look at the two boxes, one of them says Series 16, 2016 bonds. The total amount that would be issued is $14 million. And notice the projected interest rate, the current market for that, based on a 20-year retirement, would be 3.9%. You recall when we first did our study, we were looking at 5%, then we looked at 4 and 5%. So the current market assumption would be 3.91%. The Series 2018 bonds, they use the presumption that, and I think I highlighted it for you. Did I highlight it?
No.
Oh, Lorinda did this. I highlighted my own. Under the bond assumptions at the bottom of the chart, it says that the interest rate for that series would be 5.4%. Now, they were being conservative on that. Small amount for a 20-year period. So at any rate, I wanted to make sure you had that information. So that's all well and good. This is very important, so keep this in your records, if you would. So that's good. Now, a couple of things. I put together, since this was approved, I didn't want to let you go home too early tonight. Pass these down, John. One to Ted. John Keim and Lorinda, here's a copy for you. I put together just some tasks I wanted to discuss with you. So, coming out of the barrel, Township Board has put this on the ballot for November 3rd. Pretty soon it's going to be August 1st. So we really got to get going on a public information. Inform the public of what they're voting on. So the first thing I thought is, item number 1, let's develop a 4-page flyer. Took some liberty here. All I've got is the cover page, and so I already what I wanted to discuss with you, just to get you thinking a little bit. What I'd like to develop is a 4-page flyer that we could, Ted, he's got something for you here. What I want to develop, and we need to do it quickly, well before our next meeting, and I'll work with staff on it, is a 4-page flyer that we can use to mail out at the appropriate time, sometime in September probably, and also that we can hand out when we give talks. And so I just took a stab what I would do at the cover. So I changed things around a little bit. So if you received this in the mail, what would draw your attention to it? It would be folded like this, and maybe some kind of a takeoff of our original report, fixing our roads. But the township manager pointed out to me, we need to say fixing our roads and water system. That's what it's about. And we say something like, please review, please study our proposal for the November ballot. And then we show a map with the key on it on the front page that shows what roads are going to be improved. Now, would that catch your attention? Then I thought page 2 might be the narrative explanation of what we did and why. Page 3 could be this map again with a listing of what we're going to resurface, what we're going to chip seal, and then the water map. And then at the very back side, when we did flyers before, your postage is going to show up on half of it. But I thought one half of it could be an explanation of why we believe we can't rely on the county to fix our roads. The language of the ballot proposal would actually be on page 2 of this. I'm just throwing this out. So I'm going to work something up. As soon as we have something, I want to give it to all you. We'll mail it out early. I'd like to develop something by our August meeting. Okay? One thing. You can jump in here anytime anybody wants to. Second is, I thought, so we need to have it as a handout and a mailer. Then we need to develop storyboards. What my thinking is we develop on, foam board, layout of all this, maybe more information, our original report or something that we could put on an easel and have it in the lobby of City Hall, our Township Hall. Maybe people are going to be paying their taxes since the end of we have it there. People come in to get absentee ballots. We have it sitting where the treasurer's in the lobby there someplace. I even thought maybe you put it at Kroger's if they allow us. It's an information piece is what it is. I don't know if the post office, I suppose they won't allow it. Maybe some banks would. If we did one of these, we could easily photograph it and do several of them. Have them available in public places. I don't know what you think of that idea. I'm just throwing out ideas. Develop a list of clubs that we want to go present to. And I pulled this off the township's website, but you got the Alliance for the Arts, the Boosters, the Garden Clubs, the Nature Conservancy, the Senior Citizens, certainly, GIRA, the Kiwanis, Rotary, Knights of Columbus, VFW Post. Month of August and September, we need to go around and hit as many clubs as we can. We need to hit all of them. Number 4, we make arrangements to present this to other township boards and commissions. Planning Commission, the ZBA, everybody. We need to go to them and Parks Commission, whatever, Airport Commission, and make this presentation. The more people we expose to it, they're the leaders. We need to go and share this with them. I thought we don't want to forget the police and fire departments. Firemen are out there, policemen are out there. We need to go when they have meetings, maybe at roll call. We need to go to the senior center, and maybe when we do that, several of us would go to the senior center. Anyway, go to the school board. I had the thought that maybe our September meeting, we would invite in all the area realtors. I ran into a realtor friend of mine, probably most of you know her, and we were talking, and she said, "Oh, by the way," she said, "that was the county that did that, put those stones on the roads. What do you call it?" And I said, "Chip seal." She said, "Yeah. How'd you get the county to do that?" I said, "The county didn't do that. We did that." She said, "Oh, I told some people that were looking at a house that the county did it." So I thought, well, we need to get the realtors in here so they can get the straight scoop. I thought we probably at our September meeting we should advertise on cable that we're going to have an open house or a presentation here on it. And maybe at every one of our meetings we have a presentation. In mid-September, the absent ballots go out about the 20th of September. So mid-September, we ought to mail out the flyer. Timing question, what's the right time to mail it out? At our October meeting, have another public presentation, advertise. That's all we can do is invite groups to come in or people to come in. And and then develop a cable program. We already started talking, Dale and I, to Ted about putting, this is going to be on the website. Our original report's going to be on the website. The flyer will be on the website. And anyway, we need to do as much as we can in letting people know what it's about so we don't get accused of not sharing to the public what we're doing. So those are some thoughts I laid out. I'd like to see what your additional thoughts are if you want to add to it. If you have any ideas, something.
Your cable TV program, you're talking about having a presentation and running it.
Right.
I think I believe, Ted, you did the last one. And I think that's what really went a long way to sell it to the people, that it was there, it was out there, the message was out there, and they could understand what was going on, rather than last minute getting a flyer in the mail and that's all they knew, and they were either against it or for it before that even got there. But with something like that, I think that'd be very important.
Good. I think we're going to do it, and hopefully the cable Ted would run it several times a day. Being redundant, I guess. But all right, so these are.
It has to be the way we ran the last one. It was informational, sitting right there. And fortunately, as an elected official, and Budney as an elected official, we can't promote a yes or no vote.
Right.
But we can sure present the facts.
And that's exactly what we have to
Well,
do.
none of us can ask for a yes vote.
Right.
I think we have to be guarded about that. And anything we write, any cable program, we can't spend. I mean, technically speaking, we're here representing the township. We can't ask for a yes vote, but we can ask people to study it and vote. The distinction there. So we will be very careful about not asking for a yes vote. Obviously, we recommended this to go to the voters so the voters could make their judgment on it.
Bill, do we know what else is on the ballot yet?
Nothing.
Nothing on the township. School backed off, everybody backed
Yep.
off.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Okay, good.
All right, so we have I think we could consider this as somewhat of a work list that we need to work on and get going on.
We don't have any millages renewable at this time, so this will be on its own. Be out there, which is good, I think.
Okay, so I don't have anything else to add to that. Does anybody else comment on that? Hearing none, we'll move on. Manager's report, chip seal update.
Okay, as you already know, the chip seal is down. The fog seal was over it, and this past Saturday they striped all the roads. And Jim and I got to go out and take a tour today, and we went down a few of them just to see how they looked, and everything looks right in line. They're really noticeable now that the markings are down. And I've heard a lot of great compliments from the public. They love it. Some have said that it was a little rough in some areas, which it will be. I know Phil had mentioned it over on South Point. It was a little rough, but I think it's kind of it's changed a little over there now.
Before they put that second coating on.
Yeah,
yeah. They came back the day after I'd contacted you. I saw them back there grading that.
And so I have had some negative comments, and it's from the little stone chips and that, hitting the undercarriage of the cars and that. But for the most part, people are happy with it. All good? Good. Anybody else?
Yeah, I almost entirely good. A couple of people, the dust that was involved, which is part of the process. Yeah. But pretty much everybody is very, very happy with it.
I have a comment, probably get me in trouble. My wife, I made her go for a ride with me, and we drove the roads. And the first road we drove was Horsemill. And she says, "Oh, this doesn't drive real smooth." And, of course, she doesn't evaluate roads. And there's a little vibration to it, and probably more so on Horsemill than any place else. and you drive the roads, you feel a little vibration in your car. But what people forget is what it was.
Yeah.
Where it's really noticeable is you drive the sections of East River we did. Drive those, and I think South Hill too, or South Point too. When you drive those, you feel a little vibration, little, but you forget how bad it was before. I mean, it was really bad. And when you think about the base repairs we made, we've really made some good progress. So we'll see how it works out. A couple of the comments people wrote about was, well, let's see how it gets through the winter. Of course, judging from what I've seen in Monroe County, gets through the winter pretty good. But anyway, any other comments on chip seal? We got it done anyway, finally, after 3 years talking about it. All right, so we'll move on. Lorinda?
Okay, the next one would be the update on the construction progress of the local road initiative improvements. GV Cement has been out doing concrete repairs, Manchester area, Grays, Park Lane. They should be completed by the end of July. We also have, we piggybacked on a contract with Riverview to do some crack sealing, and the bids came in, I don't know if we had about $88,000 for crack and joint sealing that we submitted to the county. When the bids came in, it looks like the cost for Groseal is going to be right under $58,000. So the majority of the roads are on the south end. We also went out and looked over at Lake Road because I had heard a couple residents complain about it. They're going to add Lake and part of Rucker to this list as well. Rucker, they said they're going to have to do some overbanding on that, on certain parts. But Lake Road really needs it. So I was happy with that. So
in other words, because they pooled it with 4 communities when it was bid through the Downriver Community Conference,
yep,
we got a better price per
Better
linear
price on
foot.
it.
And instead of 88,000 to do the
Come up
same
to-
volume, it was 57,000. Do a little more, so that's good.
All right, and the last update I have is on the Wayne County household hazardous waste collection. The next one will be on Saturday, August the 15th, from 8 until 2 at the Westland Shopping Center. This is posted on the township website, so if you just click on it, it'll take you right over to the Wayne County web page, and it lists all the examples of acceptable items, including electronics. And this is free. That's the end of my report.
Okay, moving on. The chairman has no additional comments. Commissioners, Jim, Budney?
The only thing I wanted to mention was that at last night's board meeting, we also passed the road initiative agreement with Wayne County for next year. So that is, if they come up with the money, we'll be in good shape to take advantage of it.
Thank you. Jim?
You hate this bill when I do this to you, but publicly thank you for all the work that you've done. I mean, it's just unbelievable what you've done as a volunteer. It's incredible.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you. John Riley? Bill?
Nothing further.
Les?
I have one question. The dust bond that we do on the roads, now I brought this up quite a few years ago when I was working. What we pay for dust bond on the roads, why don't we look into seeing what it would cost to chip seal these roads, maybe do 1 or 2 a year, and eventually we'll eliminate all the gravel roads.
Not a bad idea.
I don't know what dust bond cost, what we paid for dust bond. I know there's some people are complaining because it's deteriorated. On my street looked like it's asphalt. But I brought this up when Barry was here, and I said, why don't we look into chip sealing those roads and eliminate this dust bond? Even you do it every 5 years. Look, well, the amount of money you would save.
We spent right now, it's close to $40,000 a year, right? 38,
38,
39,000.
Over that base, it'd be okay to do that? Over a gravel base, if chip seal works?
That's what the guy told us. Right.
Well, most of our, I think you make a point that a lot of our gravel roads already are pretty compacted. If the county would quit grading them up,
Yeah.
'cause in the
Quit
spring,
tearing the dust bond up.
so that's something we could certainly something to look at. We'll make a mental note of that.
Yeah, yeah.
I know the street.
Don't be selfish, Les.
Well, and I think Les, okay, that's a great point, and I think we should look at it.
Uh,
Are you done, Les?
No. Did you hear back from Sahio on the mess across the street from me?
Yes, I did. I asked him about it, and he told me that was when they graded for, I think, when the fire station was built, that the DNR declared some wetlands there and that they required the dirt to be put there.
No, he's wrong. He's wrong. Because they never finished.
I guess we should have a meeting together with him then. Maybe I asked
Right.
the question wrong.
Because they never final inspected that job that Lawyer did. He was supposed to haul the dirt out. He never hauled the dirt out. He came in on a Saturday and he bulldozed all the dirt. And he created a berm and he created a lake. Go look and see how many dead trees are in there now.
Oh, I did with you.
Hundreds. Hundreds are all dead now.
Then
And it's a health hazard.
make a note, Lorinda. I'll ask for a meeting. Actually, Dale Rayum knows about it, and so Ohio. Maybe I asked the question wrong. So I'll ask for a meeting on this. Okay, well, let's finish with Les. Okay,
Well,
Les? Try to meet this month.
Okay, I vented my spleen on that.
Okay, very good. Very good. I did ask about it, though. Phil?
Question.
Well,
I know. They keep pushing it back. I heard June 15th, and they pushed it back to July 15th. I don't know if it's ever going to happen.
well, it was in their budget
Right.
for July 15th start. I guess we know who to call. Let's make a phone call and well, they haven't laid anything out
Not
yet.
laid anything out, right.
So the answer is we don't know when they're going to start, but let's make a point of finding out. I will make a note of that.
I got one question too. Are they going to do any weed cutting?
Well, Lorinda and I drove around today and looked at the weeds around the island, and I asked her to contact Wayne County and see when they're going to come out and mow. And I complained to the township manager today to do about it. So
Some of the people that complained.
3:30 today, I was here at Township Hall. We had spent an hour driving around looking at, and she noted on a map the areas that need to be cut back.
Some places where the streets come out the parkway, people in cars can't see. I mean, like my van, I have no problem looking over the top of the weeds, but some people complain to me about they can't see.
Les, I totally agree with you. Not only that, it looks tacky. Now it's your turn, Ted. Oh, Phil, did we finish you?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. I'll entertain Lorinda? John? Okay.
Motion to
I
adjourn.
make a motion to adjourn.
Well, then I'll second it.
Moved
Thank
and
you,
supported
sir.
that we adjourn the meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
That's the next one.
See you, Lorinda.